As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Lowe, and each week, every episode, we take a look at just one question. We talk about what the experts say, what we've gotten wrong, occasionally what we've gotten right, but we always leave you with one powerful but simple pro move of the week. Today, I am joined by my good buddy, Mr. Bobby Lewis.
Hey, man. What's going on?
How you doing, Bobby? Hey, tell our listeners, what is it you do here at Family First other than podcast hosting?
Well, podcast is part of it, but also a lot of All Pro Dad writing, a lot of copywriting stuff, emails that go out to people that support Family First, and a lot of articles for NFL players, and it's just a lot of fun. Yeah, it's good stuff.
And you and your wife, Jocelyn, live here with your 3 kids?
We do. 3 kids. We've been married 15 years now.
I love that. Well, good deal. Glad you're here, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what's our question of the week?
Question of the week is, what problems do kids deal with that we didn't have to? And I'm sure there's at least one of them out there, right?
Yeah, because it can sound soft sometimes when we be like, kids today.
I hope this isn't a get off my lawn type of episode, but it kind of has that feel already,
No, I can already tell you, I don't struggle with thinking that my kids have a softer environment than we did. I think they've got way more challenges and way more things to deal with than we did.
They do walk uphill in the snow both ways to school. Your kids
Absolutely.
do. Yeah.
Emotionally and relationally.
Yeah. I think it's a big deal because I know that, I'll speak for me and a lot of other folks that I've talked to, we can romanticize how difficult life was back in the day, right? Oh man, you have these fancy smartphones and it'll just give you directions and order pizza all at the same time, right? Like it'll do all these cool things for you. And I had to print off MapQuest, or whatever I had to do, or like I had to learn how to fold an atlas. Impossible.
Right.
And I do think that we romanticize how hard things were back in the day. It does no favors to our kids because they're actually struggling with a lot of things. And if we gloss over it or ignore it, how's it going to make them feel?
Right. What do you think, for dads in their playbook? What are some things that they need to know?
One thing that all dads need to reckon with, and I'm sure they do, but maybe it's just being reminded of it is important, is that our kids live in an increasingly online world. Everything is online. I actually lamented this fact this past baseball season because my family wanted to go to a baseball game and we hadn't been in a while. So we went to a major league game and I could not get into the door without downloading the MLB app on my phone. There were no paper tickets. There was no park. You had to literally have it on your phone or you couldn't enter. And I thought, this is silly. Why can't we just walk up, get the tickets at the window and walk in? But that's a world that's new for me, not for them. They've only lived in a world where everything is online. And because of that, they're living their lives online in many ways, whether it's at home or at school. And that introduces one of our biggest things for our playbook, that's stuff to look out for, which is cyberbullying. And we can really just drop the word cyber because it's just bullying at this point because they're living so much online. There's really no point to add the cyber part. It's just bullying. The bullying that took place on the playground, maybe when you were a kid or when I was a kid, that bullying still exists. It's not out and open on the swing sets. It's happening on Snapchat. It's happening on wherever these kids are hanging out online. And that bullying is intense and it feels very, very personal, even if they're not in the same room.
Right. And sometimes it's even subtle too, because, before the internet, before social media, if a kid missed a party, he would find about on Monday, right?
Yeah.
They're seeing full, real time.
Yeah.
Here's what you're missing. Here's what we said. Here's where we are, but we told you we were going here. I watched this happen with my kids, but they said they were going here and they're here.
Yeah.
You talking about heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I've been lied to and now they're posting it. So it's tough.
And even more than that are some of the things that kids will get picked on. We had a great episode. I think it was episode 42, deepfakes, AI deepfakes. We had a conversation with Jason Hood, who is in charge of our All Pro Dad chapter program. And we were talking about just how dangerous deepfakes have become. If you're not aware of what that is with AI, really worth going back and listening to, because there are kids who are living online life and they're taking images of classmates and they're photoshopping them, for lack of a better term, into sexually explicit photos that they're then sending out to friends on Snapchat and other things around the school. You're a victim and you don't even know it. And the kids are looking at you in school. You're walking down the hall and you've been a victim of cyberbullying. You didn't even know it. And it happens all the time. In fact, there's kids in different states where they're trying to figure out laws to, take care of, the people who are actually doing this and have some punishments for them. Cyberbullying is a real thing. And even that is extreme. It can be much softer than that, where it's simply, oh yeah, your nose looks funny or whatever. And they comment on these on the photos, and that hurts. That hurts a kid. And it's not necessarily to your face. It's not like you can hear tone. It's not like you can hear inflection. It's just the words, and you internalize these words in your heart, and that can just rot away at your soul as a little kid. It's difficult.
Right. And we've got to be aware of what they're going through, right? We've got to be aware of what they're experiencing. We used to have to deal, our parents would have to deal with our friends in the neighborhood, because those were the people we were dealing with. And, kids at school. Kids are having to deal with people all over the world. And that's not being dramatic. That's just truth.
Well, the friends, you go where your friends are. And unfortunately, the friends are online, but so are their enemies. And so they're bumping into all these different opportunities, maybe for bullying in a way that's in many ways more intense than maybe what I would have faced in the locker room or at the playground or whatever. I found an interesting stat from Pew Research. 88% of teenagers told Pew that they shared too much information online. Regretting basically what they had written. And a lot of that, I'm sure, is being picked on for what they had shared. They maybe went to the beach with their family, took a picture, and then they got made fun of for the bathing suit. Or they went to the park and like, oh, you're playing with your little kids. You don't have any friends. Like those sort of things happen all the time. And cyberbullying is something that, even though it didn't happen to us as dads, most likely, it is happening to our kids. And it's one of those things that they're dealing with. We didn't have to. We have to take that into account. We can't sweep that under the rug and pretend it's not as bad as what we dealt with. We may have gotten punched in the face by a bully. They're getting punched in the heart with words and other things.
So if it's not sweeping it under the rug, what's the opposite of that? For dads, they're feeling this and they're feeling overwhelmed and flooded right now, saying, oh, cyberbullying, it's this thing. It's so terrible for my kids. What's our flip the script on this to put in their playbook to help them to deal with cyberbullying?
Open and honest communication, reminding them of who they are, reminding them of their value, not based on what someone online says, but what you say about them, what the Lord says about them, what's true about you and your family. All those things are very important. A lot of kids are going to take to heart what they read. It's our job as parents to remind them of what's true, because not everything they're going to read online is true.
That's good.
And that definitely is the case with cyberbullying. Second thing that kids are dealing with now that we probably didn't have to deal with so much is screen addiction. And I can't even say it's necessarily kids' fault so much, because screens are everywhere. We carry them in our pockets. They're on the wall at our house. They're in the computer screen in front of them at school. Everywhere a kid goes, there is a screen, and it's becoming more and more addictive because,
we're all addicted.
They're all, I can't speak for myself. Yes. We're all a little bit too much addicted to this stuff, but it especially affects kids. So check out this statistic, Ted. A 2016 Common Sense Media survey said half of teenagers said they felt addicted to their mobile devices. 3/4 said they felt compelled to immediately respond to text, which they're getting all day anyway, or a social media post or any other notification. They're getting notifications on average like every 5 seconds if they're using them for, communication, email, stuff for their sports teams and all these sort of things, text message from mom. All day long, these things are pinging them, which only adds to the addiction.
Well, and we've got to give them a break from that. This is where it's countercultural. This is where you're going to get a lot of rolled eyes. You're going to get no other parent is doing X, Y, Z. All the other kids, none of the other kids do this. But just taking moments, like where are those tech-free zones for your kid? We have a whole episode about that.
Yep.
But one of the things we talk a lot about at our family is we use the time in the car, especially local trips. Sometimes if we're taking, go see grandparents a couple hours away, we'll break the rules. But when we're together in the car, that is a phone-free zone.
Yep.
And it's the best time that we can talk. We'll have dinner, non-negotiable.
Never.
Non-negotiable. So I think it's just having those windows of time. Then there's the rules of the phone of going, your phone lives in my bedroom at night when it's charging. Yeah. But it's having those things. we don't have to get emotional and overwhelmed right now. Cause these kind of conversations, Bobby, we've put together a podcast about it, and this is overwhelming me at times because it's flooding. And so dads, if you're feeling flooded right now and you're like, the sky is falling, take a deep breath and say, okay, what do we want to do at our house? Let's have some rules that they're probably not going to like, but you can do some things. You're not victim to this. So I just don't want dads to feel overwhelmed.
There's so many downstream negative effects to using your cell phone too much. Sleep is one of the biggest ones for kids. They're just not getting enough sleep. They'll go in their room, they'll have the cell phone on, and it's 3:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden they've been looking at TikTok for 6 hours. You thought they were sleeping. They get up in the morning 4 hours later, and they can't function at school because they've been looking at these screens all night long. I love your rule about the phone in the bedroom at night. We try to shut ours down at 8:00 every night, which is hard. We don't necessarily stick to it as often as we should. But that was our rule in our house is 8:00. Phones are gone. We're setting them aside. And I think that starts to kind of eat away at that addiction just a little bit. You're giving yourself a little break. And then maybe if you can back it down to 7:30, awesome. Or back it down to 7, awesome. I think, but little steps like that, like what you're talking about, I love the idea of the phone away at nighttime. It's a good thing.
Well, and when you put it away at dinner and you have a high-low question, the payoff is pretty instant. Like you see what you get back. Yeah. And it's just worth it. Yeah. It's just absolutely worth it. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to come up with these rules. I would say this, our 24-year-old's the best of all of us. Yeah. He'll say, hey, screenagers, how you doing? So he calls us on it pretty good.
A little convicting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know it's, I've talked to people at our church that are in the singles ministry, and they said a lot of singles are doing a thing called phone stacking. They go to dinner, they stack their phones. The first one to pick up a phone has to pay for everyone's dinner.
Ooh, I like that.
So I thought singles are teaching us, and they're like, hey, and people are learning. Yeah. I think people are getting wise to what phones are doing. And I think people are self-adjusting. I mean, this is all brand new for all of us, right? And so I just thought, well, that's a great move.
Well, and those young singles you're talking about are going to restaurants doing that. They grew up in this, dealing with these same problems that the kids are dealing with now. They've grown up 10 years ago. They are the kids' age that maybe my kids are now. And so if they're doing it and they're trying to shove it off, maybe I should recognize that and say, maybe I can help preemptively, make some changes.
I love the interview we had with Joey Odom from RO.
Yeah, that was eye-opening.
Oh, it was one of my favorite interviews for sure. Talks about this amazing way to deal with this, and it was birthed out of his own struggles. And isn't that true for most of us, at least this podcast? Yeah. But that's a great episode to check out as well.
Well, he noticed a problem, and I think we all see the problem, and he came up with a solution. That's a really good episode. You should go check that out. A third problem that kids are dealing with today that maybe we didn't have to deal with is information overload. We got information, but now kids are just hit with an avalanche of facts and data and numbers and videos and images. We didn't have access to all that sort of stuff when we were younger. Overload is just that. It weighs them down. It's overloading them, and that's not good for kids.
Right. And there's no sense of wonder. And here's what I mean by that. Yeah. You don't have to wonder anymore. No. Hey, it used to be, who won the World Series last year? I don't remember. Okay.
Not just last year, 1936. I'll tell you, boom. Yeah.
You had to work for it. But yeah, I do think it's so much because of the echo chamber world, that's, I was, during COVID, my daughter come flying downstairs. Hey, this is what I've learned about COVID on TikTok. Yeah. And then I would say, hey, well, you should go watch. I didn't have anything neutral either. So we're on information overload as well.
Well, the thing I thought about when we were pointing these things out with overload is the word hurricanes, because we had some hurricanes in the state of Florida last year. And I thought, okay, when I was a kid, let's say 4th, 5th grade, and I had to write a report for school on hurricanes, I could go to the library, I could find a book, and it would give me a couple of stats about hurricanes. Now, your daughter, my daughter can just pull out the cell phone and just say, hey, Siri, tell me about hurricanes. And not only would they get information about hurricanes, they would see an image of someone who died. They would see a tsunami flood or whatever the devastating, effects of the hurricane were. They would say, oh, there were 4 Category 5 hurricanes. 3,000 people died this year. So all this information is just flooding into them. And they're like, I just wanted to know how fast the wind was. You're like, you're getting extra information, and that can saddle a kid. And when I think of information overload, I actually focus on the word overload in kind of the sense of weightlifting. Like if you're going to go out and lift 30 pounds, probably not a big deal. I can lift 30 pounds. If you want me to lift 530 pounds, I can't do that If it's heaped on my shoulders, it's going to overload us, it's going to break us, it's going to wear us down, and it's going to hurt us. And I think information overload kind of does the same thing mentally for our kids. They can't handle all this information. They can't handle the image of, towns devastated by hurricanes, but yet they're getting it anyway because that's what is available to them.
And then they have to filter, is this true? Is it not true?
Absolutely.
So it's a lot.
Another thing that information overload does is it gives kids too many doors to walk through. They've got too much to decipher. How do I make decisions when I have all of this data? It's hard because it's easiest for us to make decisions between two options. But when you have 2 million options, now what do you do? Now what do you do as a kid? It's tough. It's tough for them to manage all that.
Absolutely. It's a lot.
Another thing that kids are dealing with today that I know that I didn't necessarily struggle with as much is identity crisis. Kids don't necessarily know who they are. And that's not a political statement in any way. That's kids just not knowing who they are because kids have always not known who they are.
Right.
But there were fewer competing forces, I think, trying to tell them who they were supposed to be years and years and years ago. Whereas now there's so much pressure for kids to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to present online a certain way, to fit in a certain way, to have their tribe, if that's the right word, just to have everybody working in the same way so that they gain the friends they want, the popularity they want. It's so difficult. And it's a global thing now. Whereas if you were just trying to fit in with like 10 buddies at school, now they're trying to fit in with whatever's popular around the globe. Do I look like this person? Do I sound like this band? Do I look like so-and-so? It's so difficult. They're trying to mold their identity and they haven't quite learned who they are yet.
My daughter was talking to me this week and she's really processing some things about physically how she looks and and she was talking about how even when she sees a good picture of her, she doesn't trust it because here's what she knows. She knows that she and her friends took
16 pictures,
and then they picked the best one. So she doesn't even trust a photo of herself. And we were out of the country and I'm watching girls take pictures of each other and they would take pictures and then they would walk and they would look and then they would go back. So they're even competing with themselves and then not trusting what they're seeing. And so just the confusion of that, the confusion of what's beautiful, the confusion about it's heartbreaking.
I had a conversation with my wife about this recently because she was a very competitive swimmer in high school, very good at it. She got offered college scholarship to go swim, ultimately turned it down because she had a shoulder injury. But she told me when she had her shoulder injury in high school and she was unable to swim, she didn't know who she was anymore. She's like, I have been a swimmer my whole life. I'm very good at swimming. I'm in the pool in the morning before school. I'm in the pool after school. I'm working, I'm practicing, I'm winning these races. And when that was taken away, she didn't know who she was anymore because her identity had become the swimmer. And I think that happens to kids a lot. They're trying to either make mom and dad happy because a swimming scholarship would be great, right? Or they're trying to make their friends happy because, well, if I'm not on the swim team anymore, maybe I don't have the friends anymore because that's what they do. They're trying to make everyone happy by molding their identity into what they think they should be, that they actually don't ever find out who they're supposed to be. And that's a big, big problem for me as a dad. I don't want my kids to struggle that way. And maybe I struggled a little bit to that respect when I was younger. But I think it's harsh now. I think it's tougher.
It is. And that's why home has to be safe. That's why this is where we leverage our strengths for our kids. And I would say even little bit more maybe for our daughters is to speak that worth, validate way more than their feelings of who they are, to get them to question, like, who are you listening to? Who are you believing?
Yeah. Last thing that I think kids are dealing with now that we didn't deal with as much, and I know this is 100% true, is lack of exercise.
Absolutely.
Kids spend way more time inside. They spend way more time on devices. We talked about screen addiction, way more time sitting in front of a television than in generations past. There wasn't an internet to distract you in 1972. Right. There wasn't constant Netflix in 1985. Like those things that parents maybe grew up with that weren't even considered to be a distraction, weren't invented yet, are inundating children today. And so there's so many opportunities for them to not go out and exercise, not move their bodies, not be healthy, that really is causing a really, uphill battle for them when it comes to their health.
And I watch my kids, and especially when they were younger, you have those rules, you turn that off, they start moving their body.
Yeah.
They start, because they don't have to on a screen. It's fascinating. They've got the world at their hands. So you watch kids, when you take that away, and you might get rolled eyes for a little bit, but then you start watching the movement.
Here's a great tip for dads who are trying to get their kids more active. Get outside and play with them. Put your phone down too. You've said this on the podcast multiple times. You told a story about how you went in and told your wife, my kids would never get tired of me throwing the football with them. Mm-hmm. Same thing with my son. If he could, he would sneak into the house and move the clock up to like the end of the work days and without me noticing, so I could go outside and play longer, because he just wants to play outside. I love that about him. They want to spend time with you. And if you're exercising, it's good for you. If they're exercising, it's good for them. Do it together. It's a cool bonding thing. You can have that fun memory, ride bikes, go out and skateboard. Wait, don't skateboard. My wife got hurt on a skateboard. Go out and swim. Go do something fun with your kids and get active and play with them. They'll love it. It'll be memory making. It'll be good for everybody.
Absolutely. Find a habit. We have jumped on the train of pickleball with our other. Yeah. I actually see why everyone's playing it. It's pretty awesome. And my very competitive sons are really going after each other with
it's like life-size table tennis. I love it. Yeah.
I think they're graduating away from the rest of the family. Like I caught them cheating on us with some real people, which was a little. Yeah. I'm still praying through that.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. Yeah. They will make memories around physical activity.
I think this is important because, like we mentioned at the beginning, we kind of tend to romanticize how tough it was, air quotes tough, when we were younger. And we're not dismissing that. Maybe you did have a tough childhood growing up, but that doesn't excuse away the belittling of our kids growing up. They're having struggles, and just because they're different than the ones that we had doesn't mean we can just ignore them, because they're feeling it. They need some help. We're the perfect people to guide them through it.
Absolutely. Come alongside. So, Bobby, what's our pro move?
Pro move of the week. This is our favorite part of the show. At least it's my favorite part, because it's an application. It's an active step you can take. You can take all these playbook notes that we came up with, and you can put this into practice with your kids. The pro move of this week is resist the urge to compare your childhood to your kids. Both of us have unique challenges. Don't ignore theirs because it's not yours.
That's good. That's good. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, man.
And thank you. Thank you for listening. Hey, if you could do us a favor, we'd really appreciate it. If you could go rate and review the podcast, it helps us get this podcast in front of more people. We'd really appreciate that. If you want to know more advice and tips on being a dad, you can go to allprodad.com, or in the show notes, you can check out our LinkedIn profiles are there. And show notes, of course, will be full of everything we talked about today and resources. So we've got you covered on that. Thank you so much for joining us. We know you and your kids will be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.